podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello, ladies and gents, and welcome to our next edition of the Millwall Roundtable, episode number 3, which is where we invite you, the fans, on to get your views of all the happenings in and around the Den. And today we've got 2 brand new guests to the show. So I will first of all introduce Jesper. How you doing, Jesper?
I'm all right, mate. Yeah, yourself?
Yeah, good. I'm boiling. I'm not going to lie, I'm boiling. I am all good, mate. I'm all good. Great to have you on the show, Jesper.
Good. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's a real pleasure. I don't really have the chance to talk about Millwall with a lot over here, so yeah, I'm really thrilled to be on. I have to be honest.
Oh, great, mate. We can't wait to hear your views. You won't spoil where you're based at the moment. We'll come back to that later. No. And of course, a familiar face on Twitter for me, certainly. Paul, how you doing, mate? Welcome to the show.
I'm good, mate. Thank you for having me as well.
Absolute pleasure, mate. We're looking forward to having you on for some time. So delighted that you could join us on this one. Great. Okay. So, gents, we've got, let's be honest, we've been talking through the week that we hope to have a little bit more to talk about than we do. But nonetheless, we have had 2 friendlies over in Spain that we're going to cover. That I believe we watched. We unfortunately didn't travel, but we watched. So we're going to talk a bit about that. And let's just kick off with that, actually. Let's go straight in. So, Paul, come to you first, mate. Just what were your thoughts on the 2 games, other than the fact that Forest fans were quite rattled after a few tasting challenges?
I think that was the best bit, to be honest. That was the most entertaining. I was after watching that on Twitter whilst it was unfolding. Take the players off the pitch and hope they get relegated and all the other nonsense that was being spouted, but I think they all survived. So, exactly. But, there's not much to note, really. I think it was just what I expected, a hard-working Millwall team. We kind of all set in our formations. Harris has it. They had the ball. We tried to keep in our low block, and it's just practice for when we come up against bigger teams. Going forward, I was impressed with Joe Bryan. I'm hoping he stays injury-free. I've got a soft spot for him. I think, hopefully, if he can stay injury-free this season, he could be really important.
Is it his new hairdo, Paul? Is that what?
I think despite his new hairdo. Despite. No, do you know what? Honestly, I think if we can learn to love him as him, he could be a brilliant Millwall player. I honestly believe that. He's got a little bit of shit house about him. He's not the best defensively, but then we can't expect that because otherwise, I think you need a bit of everything, don't you? You've got Leonard on the right. He's more the solid defensive, and Joe Bryan hopefully can be that bit of creative down the left. So I'm going to be banging his drum this year. Can't say that out loud, can I? That sounds terrible.
You do what you've got to do, mate, right? If you
edit.
That is going to be double edited in. I think you make a good point, mate, because I don't think we've seen the best of Joe Bryan, to be honest. I think he said himself he's had a lot of niggly injuries, and he feels fitter than ever. And you're right, he's a unique character, which sometimes we may not take to as fans, but he has got a lot of quality. And I think, the ball he put through for Idemo to score against Forest was representative of that. What did you make, Paul, of staying with you, mate? What did you make of, the likes of Idemo and some of the younger players like Tom Lee who got on the score sheet? What have you made of those in pre-season so far?
I think Idamo's desperate. You can just see it on his face. You can see it even with a bit deeper, but like the agent side where he's kind of, I feel like he's thrown his name out for loads. He's basically saying, look, play me. I want to play. And even at times he's been a bit too greedy where he could have, but you can just, that's fine. I can get behind that. He's desperate to impress, taking people on. He's obviously hit the bar a couple of times, got a goal. I really like him, and I just hope I'd rather see him than a lot more in a Millwall team, because I feel like eventually he's got more to give. But with Tom Leahy as well, I think it's not his time yet, but he done really well, and I think Harris will probably try to loan him out. I imagine he don't like too many youngsters, does he? So
no, he likes a good blend. Yeah. He does like a good blend. Jesper, coming to you, mate. What have you made of some of the younger players, and who's in particular has caught your eye?
I tend to agree with Paul on Idemo. I think he's desperate to show what he's capable of. And we saw it last season in December as well when Joe played him, how good he can be, what a threat he can be going forward. And he's got that raw pace about him that we really lack in the team sometimes, and I love to see that. Whether he should play on the left wing or up front is up for debate. I can't. I think it's tough to see where his favorite position is, but I like the look of him and I like what he brings to the team. And I agree with the fact I don't dislike Duncan Watmore, but he's a bit of an average show. He can play everywhere, but he doesn't have top qualities like Idemo does in terms of his pace and his directness. So I've liked the look of him up until now. Romain as well, I think, is growing into a quality player. It's also up for debate. Should he play on the right wing? I think if we do choose to play 4-4-2, we need fullbacks to bomb forward as well, because Esse is not a right winger. He's not a Chris Hackett, a James Henry. Idemo is not a Ryan Smith or Dave Martin or these typical wingers. So we need to play in a slightly different way if we want to score more goals as well.
And that is one thing that I just want to touch on and get your point of view. So slight segue from some of the youngsters. I do want to come back to and talk about Alfie Matty as well. But one of the things for me is, look, I don't think the performances have been bad. I think Notts Forest, they were a yard ahead of us, weren't they? They're good side. Real Mercia was here nor there. But I still think we're lacking a creative spark. I can't really see where we're going to create bundles of chances for, Langstaff's a proven goal scorer, but he's only going to score if you create chances for him. I'm not sure we have that. Like, Jesper, do you think we're still, short in that department?
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, this transfer window should be far from done from our side, and where we lack in particular is in the creative department. We lack pace. We lack flair and creativity, and it's obvious. We've been lacking that for many years. It's not been in Raut's interest to bring these sort of players in, and the system we play has not really appealed to having creative wingers as well. So, yeah, definitely, that is where we are lacking, as I see it. I think defensively we look solid. Central midfield, I think we're all right, but on the wings, we are desperately crying out for something new and something creative for sure.
And Paul, if we look at the options we do have at the moment, so you talk there about obviously Joe Bryan, Idemo, Romain. Do you think that one of the things that Harris will be looking at is Joe Bryan is a more attack-minded left-back? Do you reckon in his mind he's thinking, can I actually play Joe Bryan and Idemo down that left-hand side because they're both so gung-ho? Could we be exposed there? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do imagine he's worried about that, because obviously I think the mentality definitely is safety first with him, and then, which isn't a bad thing, that's how he stayed up. But just seeing if we can work out different. So, for instance, Saville, I can see him covering that space, obviously left-hand side of centre midfield. I can see him maybe dropping back if one goes up, because if you've got Joe Bryan overlapping, Idemo likes to cut in, you just need someone to fill that space. So I didn't see many patterns at play in the friendlies, to be honest. But again, it's early doors. They're kind of getting it fitness. So glass half full, I'm hoping it's a fitness exercise, and we're going to see it a bit more when we get a couple more through the door.
Yeah, and as we're recording, we've got, I believe, 3 weeks, or is it 2 weeks? No, it's 2 weeks, isn't it? Sorry, 2 weeks till the start of the season.
Yeah.
2 weeks. So it's not a long, it's not a lot of time for. I still think we need 3 or 4. We're going to come back to that later. But one area of the pitch that we are a little bit short, because unfortunately Billy Mitchell's carrying an injury, but that has given Alfie Massey an opportunity to be brought into the first team setup. And I, for one, as an 18-year-old, I'm not necessarily saying we should put him in the first team, but depending on whether we can bring another central midfielder in as cover, I would love to see him go out to, in my opinion, a League One side. Like, he looks really solid. I'd love to get both of your views. I'll come to you first, Paul, on Alfie Massey and what you thought of him over the last few games.
He's got a bit of everything. I love the calmness on the ball. Reminds me a little bit more of a tough tackling Billy Mitchell, I'd say. It looks a bit stockier, actually. But I think he's got a lot of raw components to be a really good player, really good Millwall player. It's just about working out where, like you say, where his level is, where he fits. Do we send him with Kamal Grant to Bromley so he knows someone? Can he play at league? But you want him to play, basically. I think that's the bottom line. These young players need games, and we've not been good at that before. So hopefully we are learning, and there's a pathway for him.
Yes, mate. Completely agree. Jesper, what's your view?
Well, I have to be honest, I haven't seen much from Alfie because he didn't play too much in Spain. As I recall it, he played a little bit against Forest. I had to leave the Murcia game after 70 minutes as I was working, so I couldn't keep the stream on in the office. But I mean, for such a young player at 18, he's got to have some qualities about him. And as you say, do we loan him out? Do we keep him in the team? There are two scenarios. You go on loan to a League One, League Two club where you play a lot of minutes, or you stay at Millwall where you train with better players every day. So where's the balance and what is the best for him? I don't know. But Billy Mitchell, as I remember, did not go out on loan, and he's come through the under-21s, started with Harris in his first term, I believe, and has just grown into a real quality player, if you ask me. So I don't know what would be right and what would be wrong for Alfie at this stage, but I'd love to see some of the younger players in the team, definitely. It's a soft spot for me to see these coming through. I saw now Stevenson was linked with Brentford, and we might lose him as well. Yeah. And it's just sad to see because you want to see them perform. You want to see them in a Millwall shirt. It also baffled me a little bit that we lost Mitchell. I thought finally he was ready to come in and do a job for us, and then we sell him, which also surprised me a bit. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think Alex Mitchell, I had the pleasure of chatting to a Lincoln fan, and it come across to me like Alex Mitchell just wants to play, and if we didn't think he was ready enough to be in the first team, which in fairness to him, he's not going to be getting in the team over Tanganga and Cooper, is he? Then we sell him, and hopefully we've got some good buyback clauses and whatever. But yeah, I hope the club sort out a nice move for Alfie Massey if he's not going to be in the first team setup, because I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to his interview as well. He clearly doesn't lack confidence, which is great to see. So yeah, that's great. One other question, gents, I would love to ask you is around Zian Fleming. So he's played in bits of the friendlies. He's not been ever present because of, I don't really know, to be honest. I think, reading between the lines, I think he must have some kind of niggle. It's fair to say he had a drop-off in performance last season. I think that's fair. But how do we get the best out of Zian Fleming this season? And Jesper, I'll come to you first, mate.
That's a good question. I think he performed all right last season. I think most of the team were below par, maybe outright from Ryan Leonard, who had a standout season. I think it was just a chaotic season, and we shouldn't forget the first season he had over here where he almost destroyed the league, 15 goals and 9 assists, or what was it, and was being linked with a £12 million move. So he hasn't become a worse player. And where do we fit him into the team? That's a good question, because do we want to play with two very direct strikers in the likes of Bradshaw and Langstaff and possibly a new signing? Or do we want Fleming sitting in a little bit behind? It's a good question, but I definitely think that his favorite position is in behind the striker, where he can link up with the midfield and the striker. He's not a number 9, in my opinion. He links the play very well. I think he's a clever player. He hasn't got abundance of pace, but he knows where the goal is when he gets the chance. And yeah, it's a very good question. But it's a matter of how you position the strikers, I guess. One behind, one up front, but I think that's where he needs to play. Definitely not on the wings as he did under Raud in this 3-man attack where he was on the left side. I think then he looks poor. Then he looks poor playing in that position. So definitely not there.
Yeah, agree. Paul, do you agree with that?
I do, mate. Yeah, I do. We shouldn't be shoehorning him in. That's if say his name Gay Rowett, but I listened to an interview a while ago with him, and he basically said we recruited Fleming going last year. So that was the reason he was shoehorned in the team. And I feel similar this time around, because everyone was expecting him to go when he was linked with other teams around June. We've not heard anything since. Harris seems to want to play a 4-4-2, and he's not a striker, I don't think. So
no.
I think the only way we can help him, in my opinion, is get pace around him. I think we need as much pace and have them worrying about other players. Because at the minute, if you have someone sitting on Fleming, then there's not much, well, there hasn't been much else for other teams to worry about. So I think once they're worried about if it was a Maku or SA cutting in, he might find that bit of space, and hopefully we can get the Fleming back from the year before.
I think that's a really good point, Paul. You're right. We at times we have looked a bit one-dimensional, haven't we? Where we don't really have, other than DM Fleming, because he scored like 15 goals the season before, but he was quite streaky with them goals, wasn't he? I think he was it a hat-trick against Preston, and he would score a free kick or a worldie, but we just need to get a bit of consistency and give, as you said, give other teams things to worry about. And I think you do that by having athleticism, pace, sort of more dynamic players in those final areas. I would be really delighted if at least one of Romain Esse or Ademola Maku are on the starting lineup in 2 weeks' time. So, but that was cool. That was nice to get your sense of the friendlies and kind of that. What else do we need? And we're going to certainly come on to that a little bit later. But segueing from international friendlies to international supporters, and we're obviously delighted to have one on the show. Paul, congratulations, mate. You're coming to us live from
Exeter.
But Jesper, just tell us your story, mate. I'd love to just hear more. I deliberately haven't asked you this before because I wanted to hear it live as you're telling us. So just give us a bit more about your story. Why Millwall? I'm going to shut up and listen.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it brief, but it goes back 24 years now. So I've seen a lot over the years, good teams, bad teams, relegations, promotions. And basically it all started with Championship Manager. And for those of you who love to play computer, everyone knows that is now called Football Manager, but that's where it all started. And I read somewhere around the millennium that Millwall had a really good side full of talent. And of course they had the wonder kid, Cherno Samba. So basically I just started a game with them, played 7 seasons over the course of the summer. And that was the year we got promoted from the old Division 2 and we won it. And then we got promoted to the Championship or League 1 or Division 1 as it was called. Then I moved away from home. I was at football college where I spent 3 years. I met a good mate of mine who was also named Jesper. His team is Port Vale, he support. So it sort of became our thing that we had these 2 obscure teams in the class and the rest, I have to say one thing, here in Denmark, everyone supports an English side or a foreign side as well. You will see a lot of Arsenal, Man United, Tottenham, Chelsea supporters over here as well. But it sort of became our thing that we had these 2 obscure teams in the class, and then it just stayed with me, and we nearly got promoted the following year if it hadn't been for Stern John. And I think it just felt like my team, and it felt like a team I wanted to support, an underdog team that not everyone supported, and it just really grew on me, and I started getting a bit of merchandise, the shirt and the scarf, and here we are 24 years later. It's been quite a journey, but I couldn't imagine supporting any other club at all.
Oh, mate, I don't know about you, Paul, but I certainly grew up playing Championship Manager. So
yeah. I remember them days, good old days.
Yeah.
Oh, and so how often are you able to? Have you come over for games every now and again? How does that work out for you?
Yeah, so my first game was in 2007. It was around the Dave Tuttle, Willie Donachie area where, it was not the best. But we lost 1-0 to Leicester. I think the idea we actually got relegated. But for me, it was just fantastic being over and seeing the team first time live at the Den. And so much has happened also down at the Den. The match day experience is completely different from back then. And I try to come over once or twice a year, if possible. It's not that expensive for me to travel over, so it's okay. And I also had the opportunity to live in London from 2012 to 15, where I worked in logistics near Wimbledon. So I went almost every weekend when I could to see the games. It was a dream of mine coming over and being able to go almost every weekend. So I try and make it once or twice a year to the Den. Always great.
Oh, that's great, mate. Well, you'll have to certainly let us know when you're coming over this season. I'm probably gonna be quite generalist here, and apologies in advance, but you're Danish. Lucas Jensen's Danish. Did you know of him before we signed him? Like, did you have any insight into him, or was he on your radar?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not like Iceland where everyone is your cousin here. So no, I didn't know him. I have to be honest. And I think he moved to England quite young, actually. When he was around 1920, I believe he moved to Burnley, had a few loan spells before he ended up at Lincoln. So, and for one moment, I actually thought he was, if you remember Brian Jensen, who played for Burnley for many, many years, I actually thought at one point it was his son. But I looked it up yesterday because I wanted to be sure, and it's not. So, but I don't know him. I think he had a brief spell in Helsingør and when they were in the best league, but it was only a couple of appearances and then he was off, really. So I don't know much about him. But there's been a few articles about him in the Danish websites who covers football. So yeah. But obviously excited to have another Dane in the team. Last one was Paul Hubert, quite a character as well. Yeah. And then it was, and we go way back, then it's Jimmy Nielsen. I don't know if you remember him, but he was a blonde goalkeeper. This is late 90s. I think he had one season over there. But besides that, I can't recall any other Danes playing for Millwall.
Cool, your memory is good. Your memory is very good. Jesper, like, do we have any, obviously, you stumbled across us, right, playing Championship Manager, which I just love that story, by the way. But do we have any brand presence at all in Denmark? Or I'm just trying to think of how, as a club, we do recruit more of an international following.
Yeah, I think actually I've met a few actually when I've been to the pub. Sometimes they have the games on TV. If we play an FA Cup game against Crystal Palace, it might be on, so I go to watch it. I just think that there's also people here who support Millwall for the wrong reasons, sorry to say, but everyone's been watching the films. It's called Green Street, and they support a team called Brøndby as well, who is also known for their quite aggressive supporters. So I don't have much contact with them. And yes, to see if we have any web pages, Facebook pages, international coverage, but we don't really. I mean, not in Scandinavia at least. I know we have a Dutch group or Belgian group which is quite active, and they come over as well quite often, I've seen. But in Scandinavia, I'm friends with a couple on Facebook, one from Norway, one from Sweden. But besides that, no, I haven't seen much actually.
It's a shame, but I mean,
yeah,
I do know the club have been listening to this podcast, which is great. Because they told me so. So if they are listening, there is an opportunity there, and you have certainly a person that would, I'm sure, be willing to help out to spread our name in Scandinavia. But Paul, I will come to you, mate. Like, and again, I think it's fair to say that some sections of Millwall fans, it splits opinion with the growth of the international fans. I think that's totally fair to say. I will state my opinion, all honesty. If you support my club and you support them by coming to games, buying merchandise, and you support my club in the right way, I don't care who or what you are, you're one of us. That's the way I see it, and that's the way I think it should be. How important is it for a club like us, if we want to maintain the commercial growth that we need to sustain ourselves in the Championship? How important is it for us to be attracting fans from overseas?
I think we need it. We do need it. We've had obviously a record high attendances at the season just gone, and part of that is due to obviously tourists coming over and watching us play. And like you said, if you're staying in the right spirit, and a lot of them spend money in the club shop as well. So it's not like a cheap day out for them. They're coming out, they're getting the shirts, they're getting everything else, the scarves. That's fine. Let them crack on with that. They say it takes something away from the atmosphere. I don't buy into that really. It's just obviously over time the atmosphere has changed slightly from what it was to what it is now, and at times it still gets back up to that level and then goes back under it. But when we was linked with, I'm going to get his name wrong now. It's Son Min Kui, the one that Hull are now apparently linked with. But that's what I'm more excited about, to be honest with you, because the player has to be good enough to start with. But when you've got like Sakamoto at Coventry, I think Stoke have got an unbelievable striker, like 20-year-old. And if they're good enough to play and they bring bums on seats, bring money commercially, then it's a win-win situation. And that's what we need, because let's face it, without Jimmy putting his hands in his pockets, we're just about competing as it is.
Mate, I completely agree. And if I'm honest, when I saw that we were linked with a Korean lad, I did a few background checks, and I didn't think they had much substance in it. Unfortunately, I don't think it has. But you're right, those are the types of players that have more than one positive, right? They can affect on the pitch, and then they bring a whole new, section of supporters to the club. And I think we've seen that with Zian Fleming, with Vogelsammer. I don't know if you're willing to hear. But yeah, go on, Paul. You tell us a bit more about that.
When you mentioned the subject that we're going to talk about, see, Jesper's coming on. So when I looked into it, they said that it was the highest ever that we've had of people coming in from abroad last year, and we had nearly 1,800 in a game against Norwich. And majority of them were actually German, so I think they forgot Vogie left. But that's not the point. So, yeah, it does make sense, because we've never obviously really recruited abroad until the last couple of years. Not much anyway. No,
and Vogie's an interesting one, because if you listen to any player interview that has played with Vogie, and I've often asked sort of players like leaving dues or whatever, not leaving dues, the end of season dues, about Vogie, and they all say he was a great guy. It just didn't work out for him. But I hate plugging a Gary Rowett podcast, but Gary Rowett has a podcast called Breaking Lines.
It is good. Painful, but it is good.
It's painful but good, because he's talking about Millwall players there, and it's quite insightful. Yeah. But one of the things he does say quite openly is the standard of training went up a notch when Zian Fleming and Andreas Vogelsammer joined, because they just had, I don't know, just a different style. They were first ones in, last ones out. So there's so many. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's multiple benefits from being able to bring in players from different countries, as long as it works commercially. And we're going to come on to talk about transfers and what we need in a moment. But I would love to see an international transfer arrive in the next 2 weeks before we get started. All right, so let's go on to our transfers. Jesper, I'll come to you first. What's your view of the transfer business we've done so far? So I don't want to talk about more to come. I want to isolate what we've done so far and what you think of it.
I think it's been all right. Again, bit of an unknown quantity in Langstaff and Lucas Jensen, having played in League One, League Two. It's a big step up. We know the Championship has developed a lot over the years, and it's just completely different standard. I've got belief that they could succeed. Langstaff, you don't score 28 goals for no reason. Lucas Jensen keeping almost 20 clean sheet last season. I think it's been a good bit of business. Tanganga, obviously thrilled to have him back. I thought that was the one we're going to lose. So I'm really excited that he chose to come to us. And Hachi, could you call him a signing? I think it's more he remained than he came back. So I think it's good for the dressing room. He probably is not going to play very much, I reckon. But I think you underestimate sometimes how important it is to have these senior figures in the squad. So I think that's great also for the younger players. And who else have we got? Fifth one? No, I don't think so, right?
That was it.
The other key. And I have to be honest, I don't know anything about him. But I think it's good to have that done. I think it's important that the goalkeepers are being gelled in fairly quickly before the start of the season. So I think it's okay. Still more to come. We need to improve. But luckily Harris is saying the same thing, so we can only hope that the club is doing everything they can to push these transfers through. But I haven't seen many links in the past week, so yeah. Not sure what's happening.
He's saying it a lot, isn't he? He's saying it's almost every interview, and to me, that is him highlighting his frustration, but in a way that also gets the supporters on side. Like I think that's him being quite frustrated. But again, we'll come on to what we need in a minute. But Paul, what's your view of the transfer business we've done so far?
I completely agree, to be honest with you. I mean, Tanganga I think that's the best we could have hoped for. And I think also it helps with Cooper as well. It prolongs his Millwall career because you've got someone alongside him with pace, with the positional play, and the other way around where Jeff lacks a little bit of height, Cooper's there to obviously bail him out. I think they'll make a good pairing. Well, we see that, but going forward as well. And much of a much with the others, I feel it's not. I'm not saying they're not quality additions because we haven't seen it yet, but they're more of what we've got. They're going to be hard working. Langstaff's going to run and press. And if we give them a chance to score, obviously with Jensen, I can't pretend apart from seeing the stats that I know much about him. He looks an imposing figure, so I like that. But we've kind of replaced what we lost at the minute. We haven't actually made ourselves a better side, in my opinion, yet. But I'm hopeful that that's what's going to be coming soon. I can see us going more down the loan route and going that way. Youngsters from Chelsea's and your Man City or wherever, I think we might end up with one or two of them.
Yeah. And I agree with you both. I think I'll take it a step further. I'm not happy so far, and that might not go down so well with certain listeners, because you might be like, what are you talking about? We signed Tanganga, we signed the best goalkeeper in League One, and we have, and that's all fantastic. However, when you look at, to your point there, we've replaced two goalkeepers that, through different circumstances, we've lost. Okay, we have Hutchie's not new, Tanganga's not new, Langstaff could be a one in, one out for Obafemi, right? But then from that same group, we've lost Longman and we've lost Norton Cuffey. So actually, we're backwards versus where we were. And
Campbell.
And Cam, who can forget Alan Campbell? the mystery man, Alan Campbell. By the way, I'll just, why should you bring him up? I asked every player that would talk to me about Alan Campbell, about what happened, and they all just said there was nothing dodgy. There was nothing, because there were so many different rumours and all this sort of stuff. There was nothing. They're a very tight-knit group, the Millwall players. You can see that, and that's why I think we have some of the success that we do, because I still think we punch above our weight with the squad we have. But he just didn't fit in the group, and it just didn't work out for him. So will it be interesting to see where he pops up? But the point I'm trying to make here is I'm actually not happy with the transfer business, because we've got 2 weeks left. I don't see another way in which we're going to create goals. And we've then got to integrate whoever we do bring in, assuming we do bring someone in the next 2 weeks before the start of the season. So, yeah, I'm not over the moon, to be honest. And as you said earlier, there's been a lack of links. So hopefully, come this time next week, we've got another 3 attacking players through the door. But who knows? But Paul, I'll come back to you, mate. Like, specifically, what else would you like to see us do? You know, where are the priority areas of the pitch? And if there's any players that we've either been linked with or we haven't, but you think could be on the radar, that you just sort of name some names or whatever.
Yeah. Just the creative and pace. I do feel it's just the forward players that we're desperate for at the minute. With naming names, we won't get them because it's just how it works. With me, it'll be someone left field you've never heard of, or it's never been linked, and then it's done when Richard Corley says it's done. But there's a couple I like. So Liam Miller, he was on loan at, I think, Preston last year. I really like him. And a random one, but I don't think it'll happen, is Ricky J. Jones. So he plays for Peterborough up front. Young striker, year left on his contract, and he's just a pressing machine. He just doesn't stop pressing. But Peterborough tax, so I don't think we're going to be paying fees to get anyone out of Peterborough anytime soon. So the honest answer is I don't know. I don't know who, because there's no one that jumps out at the minute. The same names you see banded around, obviously your Kiefer Moores and what they even, thank God he's taken, so we haven't got to listen to that. And it will just be interesting to see. I think whatever happens with Fleming, and at the minute it looks like he's staying, but you just don't know. I think that will have a knock-on effect to what we do, because he's too an important player not to start, but then if you're starting him, it's difficult to play the formation that I think Harris wants to play. So, yeah, it's difficult, mate.
And it also remains to be seen how much money we've spent this summer. Because I know technically in fees we've only spent just over $1 million, but I would, again, no knowledge, but I would assume that Japhet Tanganga had either a very hefty signing on fee or is the highest paid player probably the club's ever had.
Both,
yeah, probably both. So, yes, but do you agree with the areas, the forward areas as the priority? What's your view on what we need? And obviously we need it quickly.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We have 2 weeks left. Even if we sign 1 or 2 next week, I mean, they're not going to fit in immediately. So, I mean, we'll see, and also the loan window runs a bit longer than the transfer window, if I'm not mistaken. So I just don't hope that we end up with 4 or 5 loan players again, because it feels like you're starting all over every season when they go back to their parent club. So I want to see permanent signings, and I want to see some creative players through the door, whether they play on the flanks or the wings or up front. It's not really important, but as you say, we need to have more players to worry about so we can be more unpredictable when we do go forward. And we need to be a bit more adventurous. I think, not being the same stats person as you are, Chris, but I did go back 5-6 seasons that we haven't scored more than 50-55 goals every season. And last season it was even 44. And it just shows where we need to improve and where we needed to improve, the last many seasons, I would say. And one thing I will say to the transfer window, I don't know how our scouting department is at Millwall, but I do love to see when we are linked with foreign players in Belgium, Holland, Germany, because I think there's so much bargain to be found over here. I watched the German second Bundesliga, and it is actually because I also follow Hamburg a little bit, and there's so many great players there to be found. And also in Belgium, we signed Fleming for less than 2, Denor for 1.3. And they're so talented. They are very gifted technical players. So I really do hope that we're looking this way, and not only in League 2 and League 1, because you end up paying the same amount for maybe less quality sometimes, I would say.
I completely agree. And one player that we were linked with last summer was Sidney Van Hooijdonk. And then he went to Norwich, flattered to deceive. He's gone back to his parent club. But someone like him I'd be looking at. Another player I would look at as well would be Ike Ugbo. So he was at Sheffield Wednesday on loan last season, and he really tore it up. I think he had a really good record. He's a big, physical, mobile target man that can run the channels and score goals. He's gone back to Troyes, but in France, but they've said they're willing to let him go. And I do believe that although he's got Nigerian and Canadian roots, that he was actually born in Lewisham or that area. So. Who knows? But there's just 2 names as well that I would like to see us go after. But Paul, just coming to you, mate. Just we do have a new recruitment department, headed up by Steve Gallen. Is there anything you want to touch on there?
Well, in my head, I'm just thinking. I wonder if that is why we're slow. Why we're a bit slower this year? Because maybe screen's going off. Because he's coming late. Was this pre-planned? How long was it that Alex Aldridge was leaving and he was coming in? Is he kind of coming in and he's playing catch-up? Obviously, we had Cav leaving as well, so you've got the business side of it. Everything's kind of come together at a point. And, I mean, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes. But to me, from the outside, it's a big upheaval after last summer to this summer. So maybe it's the same thing again. And, that's why we're a bit slower than normal.
It's a really good point. And when you look at the players we have signed, Hutch, let's not even talk about that. You don't need a recruitment department for that. Tanganga was someone that, would have been, courted all summer. So that would have been whilst Aldridge was here. Langstaff, I personally believe, again, he was on our radar before Gallen was brought in. So that means the Gallen era has signed 2 goalkeepers. That's it. So, that doesn't massively fill me with.
Like that's not great, but yeah.
But again, let's not judge too early, and we've got another couple of weeks to go. So, gents, final question before we close out. I don't know how we're up to 40 minutes. This has gone like a blink of an eye. But that tells you just how good both of you are. And and of course that the host is pretty good too. But I want to just get your early prediction, and I deliberately didn't ask you this before the show. Early prediction of where you think we will finish in the league, and I am going to say to you, you make your own mind up about where we will finish from a transfer perspective. So, just you can assume whatever you want in terms of, you're both very logical, pragmatic people. So assume what you want. But where do you think we'll finish? And Jesper, I'll come to you first.
So you see, I think we will finish probably mid-table. I think we will be all right, actually. I think with Harris in charge, the Den is going to be a fortress again. We're going to be tough to beat. But without the new players, I think we will still struggle to find those extra goals that could take us into the top 6. We often talk about the championship being stronger every season. I actually see it different this year. I think the team's coming down now. Luton, Sheffield United had very poor seasons in the Premier League. I think it's actually, I wouldn't say it's gotten weaker, but it's not gotten stronger. So I think if we recruited correctly, and one thing I would also say about the transfers is that I'd rather they arrive late and being the right additions than we sign someone now and then it turns out that it wasn't the right fit for the club anyway. So I think if the transfer window closed today, I would say then it's not been a good transfer window. But let's see. I'm hoping that we will add someone, and obviously rather sooner than later. But yeah, it has to be the right players. But as it is now, I would say mid-table, 11th, 10th.
Nice. I'd probably take that. Paul, how do you think, mate?
I agree again, mate. I think it's going to be a season of hopefully mid-table security. Not that we always seem to be chasing something, whether on the outskirts of the playoffs or last season when we were struggling. But as long as we can do the right business over the next 3-4 weeks, I think we should be fine. We've got enough good people at the club and good players, so I think we'll be safe and we'll be fine. It'll need a lot of quality to do anything more than that, and even I like to think, maybe I can't see us getting in that much quality. So we have good days, we have bad days, and then we'll be back again like we always are.
Yeah. No, like that, mate. I'll right now it's difficult. If we assume no one else came in from where we are right now, I'm not going to lie, I'd have us in the bottom 8. I really would. But based on an assumption that we would do more business, I'll have us in the middle 8. So I'll break it down into 3. So, between like 9th and 16th. That's kind of broadly where I'll go. I think the Neil Harris factor, the camaraderie he's built, the Den being a fortress, being very good in shape, defensively solid, assuming all the players stay fit, I think that gets you so far. But to both of your points, we just need to score more goals. And I haven't yet seen the attacking impetus and the creative recruitment that we needed. So, but here we go. That's why we're here. And that's why maybe in a couple of weeks' time, gents, we can come back on and talk some more. But it has been fantastic having both of you on. Seriously, for the first time, this is just, I don't know, real good flow to it. So thank you both very, very much for coming on. I'm sure the listeners will agree with that. And I'll just come to both of you one more time just to close out and any sort of final thoughts. So, Jesper, any final thoughts from you, mate, before we close out?
No, just hoping for a nice, solid season. I think last season was just complete chaos in every department, and I could be without that next season. And I just want to see more goals, really. I mean, that's why I turn on every single game, is to see my team score. I don't even care if we lose 2-3 sometimes. I just want to be a bit more entertained. So hopefully we can get those sort of players and be a bit more attacking minded.
Love that. Well, thank you for coming on, Jesper. Paul, just finishing up, mate. Anything from you?
No, yeah, just thank you to you, mate, for having us on. It's been good. I love chatting about Millwall, so whenever, anytime, it's all good with me. And hopefully, I imagine we're going to be busy this. I think you're going to see the whole championship pick up. Obviously, Premier League teams back now, so I think the transfer market will pick up. There will be a lot more Millwall stories coming out, and it should keep us entertained until Southampton next, and then Watford at home. And that I'm a bit worried about that one, because normally when there's a big day, it's it's we never seem to do too well. We had Bristol City last year, didn't we, for John? And then it wasn't the best result. But I'm hoping for this year we can all get fully behind it and do it for Sarkic.
And I think the difference is Neil Harris and Millwall big days usually go quite well hand in hand. So
amen to that.
I trust in that, and agree with your point as well around the Premier League clubs coming back. I think the Euros has meant that generally business is quite slow. So I do think the next 2 weeks you're going to see this massive influx. So let's just hope we're on the positive end of it. Right, gents, let's go and sunbathe. I think that's probably what we're with a few beers in the garden. That's what I'm certainly going to go and do anyway. But thank you both very much for coming on, and look forward to seeing you down the den at some point. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye for now.
All right. Bye.
Sports Social Podcast Network.